Hello, guys and gals, and welcome. So today we're restarting the Skills and Abilities series, and I almost feel like it was fortuitous that, well, they got put on pause. Well, because after the Sunder Charms were released, or rather teased, in 2.4 PTR, a whole new world of possibilities has opened up for a lot of these abilities. And one of the most interesting ones, I think, for a lot of people is the Cold Sorceress. So I felt like I would go over a lot of the cold abilities in my newest part of the series. I have covered some of the other things already, like I've covered Lightning and Chain Lightning and so forth and so on, as well as I think I covered Static Field 2 and Charged Bolt. I can't remember exactly all the ones I covered so far. I know that I have covered Cold Mastery, so if you want to take a look at that one, you're more than welcome to. Obviously, with the addition of the new Sunder Charms, the Cold Mastery has changed a little bit, but not so much that I feel I need to remake the video. Today we're going to be starting at the top of the list, which is Ice Bolt. I know, the lowly Ice Bolt. It doesn't really seem like it's all that great, but we're definitely going to take a look at it, and we're going to talk about what it's used for, the synergies, utilizing it as a low-level character, things like that. And also, some of the more interesting aspects of Ice Bolt that a lot of people may not have considered. So let's get started. First off, let's go ahead and just reset our character here so that we're just utilizing our basic equipment. And we're going to take a look at Ice Bolt as it is in its lowest form, which is basically just a little level 1 skill. And let me take out some of these plus to skill items so I don't have so many bonuses going on here. There we go. We get our nice little lowly level 1 Ice Bolt, which is only 3 to 5 damage and has a cold duration of 6 seconds. Now, in normal difficulty, that 6 seconds is actually 6 seconds. So when you hit somebody with it, they're going to stay nice and frosty for quite a while. And, of course, I'm in hell difficulty. Immune to cold. Let me go to normal difficulty real quick, because we're trying to show off the ability, and it's in all of its glory, yes. So, Ice Bolt being a level 1 ability is something you'll be able to get in pretty high quality as far as like little orbs and staves and things go. So as you're running around and you find staves and stuff like that, you will definitely find ones that are capable of having even +3 to this particular ability. And you'll notice even at level 1, we have a fairly long cold duration on this ability. And of course, I have to have a level 92 mercenary with me. I wish I could just unsummon him. Just die, mercenary. Now, one of the main things about Ice Bolt is that you can get it extremely high. And it has a relatively low mana cost by comparison to some of the other abilities in the same tree. For instance, if we were to go ahead and put 1 point into Ice Blast and 1 point into Glacial Spike, you'll notice the Glacial Spike is a mana cost of 10. Ice Blast is a mana cost of 6, and then Ice Bolt is only a mana cost of 3. Now, as you level up Ice Bolt, you'll notice that the mana cost doesn't go up. It stays at 3 the entire time, which means that you can relatively easily spam Ice Bolt early on in the levels, which is kind of what it's designed for. It's just really so that you have something that is extremely easy to spam relatively early on. Now, granted, Ice Blast has a much higher damage than Ice Bolt. However, you will notice that the mana cost of Ice Blast goes up significantly as the level increases to 15.5. And in this way, when you notice that Ice Bolt does not increase in mana, and Ice Blast does, it definitely comes in handy for those situations where you are constantly running out of mana. Glacial Spike also similarly goes up in mana cost to 19.5. So one of the main benefits of Ice Bolt is just simply that it has an extremely low mana cost, and it maintains that extremely low mana cost the entire time. The other thing is that the cold duration on it is kind of insanely high, especially at higher levels, and even in like Nightmare and Hell difficulty, we'll still have a fairly good duration, even after the penalties are applied. But for instance, if we were in normal difficulty and we were applying this to a target, which is probably where you would use this anyway, you will notice that the 36-second chill duration is a kind of an insane level. I might just one-shot these guys with this high-level ice. But let's see if I can just kind of show you the massive chill duration on this stuff. And, I mean, as you can see, they just stay chilled for a relatively long period of time. And it's not exactly the most useful thing in the world, but chilling a target does slow them down significantly. And can be helpful if you're kiting, things like that, especially considering it costs relatively no mana whatsoever. Now, the main issue with this ability is that it just doesn't really put out the kind of damage that Ice Blast and Glacial Spike do. Ice Blast is a much higher single target damage ability, whereas Glacial Spike is a much higher AoE damage ability. And in both situations, when you level up the other abilities, the other items, Ice Bolt just kind of falls to the wayside as you level your character because, well, you know, you don't necessarily need a low mana cost option always. Sometimes you would rather prefer the higher damage, you know, higher mana cost option, which is, of course, 15.5 mana for an ability. And looking at the damage, Ice Bolt only does 346, whereas Ice Blast is doing 692. And of course, you can beef this up even further with other synergies like Blizzard and even Frozen Orb. And also, it's important to note that Ice Bolt is also a synergy for a couple abilities. So Frozen Orb has Ice Bolt as a synergy with a 2% damage bonus per level. And this is because, of course, if you have never noticed, Frozen Orb is Ice Bolt. Every single one of those little things that shoot out is an ice bolt. It is literally a whole bunch of ice bolts all shooting out in random directions. So you are literally, when you shoot out Frozen Orb, you are literally shooting out multiple ice bolts at the same time. And this is one of the reasons why Frozen Orb is so effective, because it's a massive number of these little tiny projectiles, and it does work out pretty nicely. Now the sad thing is that the synergy bonus isn't even really that great, and quite honestly, a lot of people skip the synergy bonus from Ice Bolt for Frozen Orb, specifically because, well, 40% extra damage on Frozen Orb isn't like a massive, ridiculous amount, and you can usually get by without it. I believe there are a couple other synergies for Ice Bolt. Most notably is Ice Blast, of course, Glacial Spike, and Blizzard all have the synergies for Ice Bolt. And all of these are going to gain a pretty healthy amount of damage by building up Ice Bolt. So if you are a Blizzard Sorceress, a Glacial Spike Sorceress, or a Ice Blast Sorceress, you're probably going to beef up Ice Bolt anyway. Even if it's not really the best option out there. And as you can see, with some pretty ridiculous synergies, I mean, literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 synergies, you can't even really max out Ice Bolt. It's kind of actually crazy just how ridiculously hard it is to max out the synergy bonuses for this particular ability. I've literally dropped 20, 40, 60... 80, 100, 104 points into skills, and I still don't have the synergy bonuses maxed out for Ice Bolt. And of course, you know, later on, as you level up your character, you're obviously going to get access to more gear. Things are going to bring those levels up and make them even higher, and Ice Bolt will see some benefits from those. But quite honestly, you're just never really going to do much with the ability past normal difficulty. Even its mana consumption benefits get slowly outclassed by things like the AoE ability of Glacial Spike combined with the massive damage of Ice Blast, and so it doesn't really quite work out as nicely. For instance, Ice Bolt does 1,128 to 1,360 in this scenario, and it has a cold length of 48 seconds. Glacial Spike also has a damage of 1,251 to 1,324. So it's pretty much the same damage as Glacial Spike, and why would you choose Ice Bolt over Glacial Spike? Well, you wouldn't. I mean, if in any situation that counts, Glacial Spike is going to be the superior choice, and the reason why Glacial Spike is the superior choice is because of its AoE conal ability, which allows you to freeze multiple targets at the same time. This allows you to kill multiple targets at the same time, too, as long as they are within that conal damage. The only situation in which Ice Bolt would be the superior choice to Glacial Spike is a single target option. I mean, as you can see, the mana cost on Glacial Spike is immense at 25 mana per cast, and the Ice Bolt definitely did maintain 3 mana per cast. So in a situation where you were attacking a single target, not a group, Ice Bolt would be superior to Glacial Spike. But then we're back to the single target damage mechanic, which Ice Blast has the superior option for. So realistically, the only situation where Ice Bolt comes ahead is its relatively low mana cost. So you could potentially work in Ice Bolt in certain situations where your mana is extremely low and you don't want to have, risk like breaching, some particular point. Maybe you're an energy shield sorceress and you're in a particularly tough situation, and so you can't really afford to spend 25 mana per glacial or 21 mana per Ice Blast. Maybe you're attacking a single target. All of this is rather interesting, but at the same time, kind of weird. It's just the one benefit that Ice Bolt has over the other two for a late game sorceress just doesn't really mean all that much, because usually most sorceresses, by the time they get into their higher levels, have solved most of their mana consumption problems. They usually have on pretty nice mana equipment like Silk Weaves or Soges or any other number of items like Spirits would have high mana bonuses. They're also usually utilizing Warmth at its high level. So the mana consumption bonus that Ice Bolt gives isn't really like the best thing in the world. And I mean, that's pretty much it when it comes to this ability. I mean, it does have some interesting synergies, which could, make you actually put points into it. Obviously in combination with Cold Mastery, it can be extremely powerful, but there's absolutely no way to build the maximum synergies for Ice Bolt along with the max Cold Mastery. As you can see, I wasn't even able to max out the synergies for Ice Bolt, and I still don't even have any points in the Cold Mastery. So it is unfortunately impossible to actually max out Ice Bolt. And why would you, anyway? I mean, to be honest with you, there are much better abilities in the Cold Sorceress's tree that can be a hell of a lot more useful. My personal favorite is Glacial Spike due to its very nice AoE damage effect and its freezing bonus, which the freezing bonus on things like Ice Blast and Glacial Spike are insane. And even if you think about the massive 48-second duration cold length on something like Ice Bolt, at the same time, we're also talking about just a massive freeze duration on Ice Blast and Glacial Spike, which, honestly, freeze duration for a character that doesn't really have a tank and can't really tank themselves is more important than chill duration. Another interesting ability that is kind of linked to Ice Bolt is actually Chilling Armor. Let me see if I can show you guys this. So Chilling Armor is an armor that the sorceress has that will actually shoot Ice Bolts at a target depending on whether that target hits you with ranged damage or not. So you have to have a monster who is shooting at you with a ranged attack for it to work. And basically what happens is when you get hit with a ranged attack, it will automatically shoot a ranged projectile back at that target, which is essentially your Ice Bolt. And the damage is, of course, on the ability, so it's 66 to 74. This ability is also something that is on the Fortitude armor, for instance, so you can, like, see the effect. It also fires a projectile every single time you are hit. Now, when you get hit by a large damage projectile, it's not really that big of a deal, but I've actually seen it do some pretty significant damage in situations where you're getting hit by small, tiny damage projectiles in rapid succession, as it fires off a response projectile for every single projectile that you're hit with, and all of them, of course, are the Ice Bolt ability. It's interesting to me how many different abilities they worked the Ice Bolt ability into. Ice Bolt, of course, as a spell is, the main spell that you would use. It's also worked into Chilling Armor. It's worked into Frozen Orb. It's also worked into the Assassin's Chaos, I believe it's called Chaos Frozen Orb or something. I can't even remember the name of it. It's part of Phoenix Strike, and when you attack with Phoenix Strike, again, the little Ice Bolts come out, which are also the same exact ones that the Sorceress has. And, it's just an interesting little ability. It's a starter ability, but to me, it is really interesting that they managed to work it into so many places in the game that we see it all the time.
You know, even even monsters shoot these. Like the frost mages in several zones will shoot these at you. You know, there's no end to the number of monsters and characters and things that can fire these little ice bolts out, and they're not a sorceress. They're not even a sorceress. Um, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, even when we're talking about the lowly Ice Bolt ability. And I hope you join me for the next episode, which is going to be Ice Blast. Stay frosty, my boys.